Hello, everyone, and welcome to Breakthroughs with Bree. On this podcast, we are discussing all of the topics that help us have breakthroughs on our personal and spiritual development journeys. My name is Bree, otherwise known as Healing with Bree, and I'm a channeler, energy healer, tarot reader, astrologer, and soul alignment coach. My mission in my work and in this podcast is to help teach people how to shift their consciousness, how to heal, and how to release beliefs and patterns and fears of their ego mind so that they can step into alignment with their soul to live lives of abundance, purpose, and bliss. In these episodes, I will be sharing either through my own lens and my own channel or through the experiences of my guest, wisdom and expertise about healing, spirituality, psychology, personal growth, holistic wellness, mysticism, consciousness, and so much more. My hope is that these conversations help you feel seen and provide support and inspiration for you with your own personal breakthroughs. I hope you enjoy this episode. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Breakthroughs with Bree. Today, I am doing sort of like a recap of an event that I went to recently that changed the game for me. The event was the big one, run by Kyle Cease, co-chaired with Dr. Kim Geramo and Aaron Abke, and Lisa Ladd was also there too. And I'm actually starting a social media series based off of this event. You're going to hear me talk about it more, but I just say that because if you found this episode from that series, welcome. I'm so excited to tell you more about what that's all about in the event. And for everybody who's listening to this episode first, it'll make sense what the series is doing and all that kind of stuff after I explain. But anyway, I'm so excited to be here with you guys. It's kind of fun because the last time I recorded an episode was before I did my big Europe trip, my first time going to Europe, which was so spectacular and also had a really big effect on me. And I got back from the trip and I thought that I was going to be recording some episodes after that. And I just felt like I was in this energy where I really wanted to stay unplugged. I had felt like I had been so present in that trip and like my energy had felt really different. So I kind of felt like I wanted to / needed to / whatever, just staying in that energy. And that was okay. Thankfully, I'd recorded just the perfect amount of episodes. Just funny how that happens, right? Before I left to where like I could do that. And then this event happened. And this is like, again, my first time recording in a minute. So it feels kind of fun to be back. So just a little bit of a background about this event, and it adds to what made this event so magical. Okay. I had never heard of Kyle Cease. Kim Geramo was the one that really drew me into this event. I listened to her on an episode of Spiraling Higher, which is a fantastic episode. I so highly recommend it. And I really resonated with her work. I followed her on social media. I saw her post about this event back in, I think it was like January or something. And I looked at it. There wasn't really a lot of information about what the event was really even going to be about. But I just had this feeling like I should go. Like I want to go. It was here in LA and I live in this area. And I just was like, yeah. Like, why not? It was still on pre-sale. Like, cool, I'll sign up for it. Signed up for it in January and basically forgot about it. And when I came back from my trip, I was like, oh yeah, I got that event coming up. And it's like multiple days and wow, like, I don't know what it's going to be. And of course, like some of my anxiety popped up, like social anxiety, because I didn't know anybody going. I had never been to an event like this. I had no idea what to expect. It's going to be like 4 full days of stuff. Like, for sure, anxiety was kicking in, but I have really been in this energy of feeling like good things happen to me. Like if I signed up for this, I trust that feeling, but also like I trust that good things can happen to me in like unknown places. And I'm really trying to embody that. So I'm going to use this as an opportunity to practice this, like literally walking and not knowing a soul, no idea what to expect, and just like practice being open-hearted and like really holding on to that like little voice that felt true in my brain that like this can be good. It doesn't have to be bad. And like to just like focus on that, walked in so nervous, sat down, and it just ended up being one of the most incredible experiences of my life, truly, which of course we're going to talk about. That's why there's a whole episode on it. But it was wonderful. Like I was worried that one of the things that I was afraid of, and some language that I've learned from the event is not even to say I am, but my pattern was like really afraid of not making connections or friends with anybody, and like walking in each day and being by myself, and on breaks being by myself, and lunches being by myself, and just feeling like isolated even in a group of people. My pattern was super afraid of that, and I was definitely witnessing that. And I met some of the most incredible people, and it was so funny. The girl that was sitting to my right And the woman that was sitting behind me, of where I chose to sat the first day, I connected with, I spoke with a little bit on the breaks, and we ended up sitting together every single day the rest of the event, and even went to lunch together like on the last day, and like exchanged phone numbers. And like, I am so grateful for the connection I made and how perfect it was that I sat next to them. And it ended up coming together so beautifully, and I connected and met with so many other people. So I explained that just to say that I struggle with patterns coming up that create anxiety. I am still creating a new relationship with unknown things, and I just really appreciate that this event was like a proof point that I can go into something blind and still be totally safe and actually have it turn out really good. And I'm so grateful for that experience, because it changed me. I'm going to remember that in the unknown situation I walk into in the future. Okay, let's talk about the contents of the event, because it changed me in such a big way. Big way. I had a ginormous breakthrough and awakening over the events of these days. Ginormous. Okay. So I'm going to do my best to just let like my higher self, spirit, God, whatever you want to call it, speak through me, share the parts of it that not only will help all of this make sense and the soul series that I'm doing make sense, but also just be the parts that are going to support all of you. And I allow that to happen. I allow it to be exactly what it's going to be. I can't wait for that. Okay, so setting the stage, it was at the Alex Theater. There was probably maybe like at least 300 people, I'd say, there. Filled up like the whole little bottom part of the theater. And again, I didn't know Alex Cease at all. Apparently he was a comedian, like a professional comedian, and then had his own awakening kinds of experiences and really wanted to start speaking about like spiritual awakening and healing and like living life being really soul aligned, like that sort of thing. And so he left comedy and started to do this, and has been doing this for quite some time. So the event started with Kyle coming on stage, and by the way, the people in the audience like stood up to clap for this guy. I'm like, who is this guy? Are we in church? Like, what's happening? The pattern of me that like gets a little skeptical and like judges a little bit for sure was coming up, like, oh my gosh, I don't know what's going on here. Should I be afraid? But anyway, he got up and he basically like just started talking, and you could tell that he was just kind of riffing. Like he knew in like general what he wanted to say, and obviously it's to talk about like consciousness and mindfulness and, you know, connecting with our souls and, you know, moving through this human experience in a way that feels loving and healing and et cetera, et cetera. So it was really cool to like literally again have no context for him and just like come in trying to be as open as I could, given my patterns were feeling real afraid and real anxious. And he started talking about how when we move through the human experience and we have things come up, essentially one of the first things I took is like how important it is to recognize that that is a pattern of your ego mind and that that is not you. And it's really important to understand that what and who you are is source. What and who you are is God, is spirit, is the universe. Like that is what you are, your soul, right? And when all of these things come up, which is inevitable, it happens for everybody, it can start the process of making that easier when you realize that that's not who you are. And starting to create that distinction. And he was using language like the pattern does this instead of saying I do this, because even like claiming something as a part of your identity with language of I am this or I feel this, like even that can kind of take it and make you like personalize it or identify with it more than you need to, and that can make it harder to like let it move and release. And that was the other part of what he said, is that the patterns that you have, they play kind of a cool purpose. They come up and they're a part of you and a part of this human experience, kind of to show you what you are and what you aren't. And there's kind of a beauty to that, right? And your patterns are not static, they're not permanent, and they can be alchemized, they can be transmuted, they can be transformed, they can be released, they can. And the reason why they can is because your soul, your spirit, the God that is you and within you, is big enough to hold the space for those, and is bigger than the patterns of the ego, bigger than the ego in general. But because of the infinite, like abundant nature of our soul and its unconditional love and wisdom and all the things that it is, like it can receive things as small as an ego and all its patterns and it can allow them to be received in such a way to where they dissolve and transmute. It's just we kind of have to learn that so that we can do it in our consciousness and our experience and start to feel like we're moving through life a little bit easier. So this was really cool to hear him talk about it. And then he had people come up on stage and he kind of did like coaching with them one-on-one in front of everybody, which was really cool to see because, of course, as you guys know, like I'm doing trigger alchemy work with people, I'm doing soul alignment work with people, and these are terms and things that I came upon before ever hearing of Kyle. And it was cool because he's essentially doing this same thing with people, just with a little bit different language and with a little bit different of approach. So I was so curious and also delighted about some of the like synchronicity and how much it resonated, and to see somebody else who's doing this work and doing it for a long time. And basically he would be moving through a trigger with somebody and kind of stop and explain to the audience, okay, this is like the ego and the pattern coming up, but that part is the soul, and they're kind of straddling between the two. And he would start like really breaking that down for everybody to understand, while of course like helping the person move through their thing too. And it was incredible. So I would say that was kind of like part one of laying this foundation to this really big breakthrough that I had about living in soul energy versus ego energy, which is what that social media series is going to be all about. And again, I'm going to explain a little bit more about what that means to me and where I was at by the end of the event. But essentially I had a huge awakening into what it means to like just be plugged up into my soul energy and like living life from that soul place versus trying to do it through the ego. And one of the questions I had in my mind during that was like, what would that even look like to like live my life from this place that I feel like I just accessed, at least to this degree? Like, what would that even look like to do this in like my everyday real life? And so I decided I was just going to document it. So I'm going to have like a day one, day two, et cetera, through what it's like day to day back in my normal life to integrate those realizations and like what it ends up being like when I'm living in my soul energy. What's different? What's the same? How does it feel? And I'm doing that all on my main social media platforms. So that would be at Healing with Bree on Instagram. And technically it's also at Healing with Bree on TikTok, but there's a period between each of the words. So healing.with.bree. So if you're interested after hearing all of this, like what does that look like after you're having a breakthrough like that? Well, there it is for you. I just did a clarity call with somebody who was interested in doing one-on-one coaching with me in my soul powered program. And this is how I knew she was the right fit. One, she has a vision from her heart, from her soul, about what her life looks like when she is aligned with her soul, when she's living within what feels like the purpose of her soul. And she's really excited by that. Two, she does have some awareness that there are some energies that feel like they're kind of like blocking her or weighing her down, or maybe you could say holding her back from really living and embodying that energy as fully as she wants to. And she intuitively felt like she needed a little bit support of how to work through those, how to alchemize those so that she could be led from and let that source, that soul energy move through her more freely. And that's why she came to me. I told her on the call, most people don't have a problem with stepping into their soul energy. It's maintaining that soul energy and letting it flow all the way through you when inevitably old patterns, traumas, fears come up. They come up to be released so that that dense energy can be dropped and you can lift. People just don't know how to do that part. And so they jump out of their soul energy. They try to approach these soul goals with kind of like an ego human strategy, and that just doesn't fit. So I'm really excited at the possibility of working with her to find like a soul approach to alchemizing those fears, letting go of that resistance so that she can fully embody that soul energy and let the life that she's dreaming of totally unfold around her. I do have a couple more spots in my soul powered program. And if you sign up before July 1st, there's 10% off the price of the program, which is so abundant and so exciting. So check out my website, healingwithbree.net. If that's something you'd be interested in learning more about, feel free to schedule a clarity call and feel free to message me with any questions. Okay, so part one is, wow, some of these things that feel difficult or painful are just the patterns of my ego. And what I really am is source energy, is spirit, God, universe, again, whatever label feels most comfortable to you. And I will say another really cool thing that happened at this event is I feel like I released a lot of the energy that was connected to what I would have identified as my religious trauma. I haven't really used the term God, just like myself, like naturally. as a part of all of this, not because I was opposed to it in any way, but it didn't feel like it resonated for me. And I feel like the reason for that was because there was still a lot of energy in my body that was really resisting that experience that I had in the very like dogmatic and strict, Christian upbringing that I had. And because I hadn't really fully made peace with that, I had made peace with it a little bit, right? But not fully. So even saying the word God felt like it brought me straight back to what that was like, and I hadn't really used it. And this event, they use that word a lot, but it felt so different. And again, I was able to receive some of these patterns and transmute them, which in the way that I'm going to keep describing. And so I have started using the word God interchangeably with spirit and the universe, and felt actually comfortable using it. And like when people say it, I don't cringe. And I watched a show the other night of people talking about like their Christianity and using a lot of that sort of like evangelical vernacular vocabulary about it, and I did not feel triggered about it, and it's miraculous. So that was just another kind of like side thing that came of it that I can do a separate episode about sometimes. But anyway, what we are is God. We are source, we are spirit. And what a lot of people are doing, what I was doing, was they're feeling the pull of their spirit. They're feeling the pull of God. And they're hearing these spiritual consciousness kind of concepts. And they're like, yeah, that sounds great. I feel like I want to go there. That feels true. But they're trying to do it through the energy of their ego. So they're feeling frustration. They're feeling resistance. They're not getting like the kind of experience and results that they want. And this, I really identified with a lot of that. And like throughout the event and through the examples of like the people that would go up on stage and some of the talks that Kyle was doing to like really demonstrate these concepts, I started to understand like, oh, a lot of what I've been doing, again, was me trying to do spiritual, like soul kind of stuff, but with the strategies and patterns of my ego, and that's why it was not working. And this event gave me an alternative to like switch that, to be able to be in my soul energy and my soul presence, like plugged into that part of myself, and be able to see what was going on, receive it, and be like, oh yeah, that's like an ego strategy. That's an ego pattern. That's cool. It's welcome here. It's fine. It's all gravy. But like, that's not like the truth that I want to be making moves from. It can be here, it can be received, it can be loved, and that's an important part of like starting to release the patterns of the ego, which again, I'm going to keep describing more about. But like in this event, again, like big picture description of what this really did for me was like, oh wait, all of this is ego and patterns. I saw that even to a greater degree than I had before coming into the event. And I was provided with like an alternative of like, oh, this is what it could look like to really be from that soul place. So let's talk about that piece a little bit more. Let's start with being in the soul energy, because I actually feel like this comes a lot more natural to us than we think. It's just how to stay in that energy that I feel like is probably the most difficult part, because what tempts us to come out of the soul energy is the ego patterns. And a lot of people, I'll speak for myself, I had not, like when growing up, been taught how to like receive ego thoughts, feelings, patterns, and just let them move. Never been taught that. I came upon some of that in doing my work myself and picking up little pieces from other people, and that's been my trigger alchemy process. So I had something, but even what this event showed me was like a bigger and also like simpler way of doing that, which I'm so grateful for. Again, it's so crazy that I found myself in a place without even realizing it, that was talking about all of the work that I was doing and resonated with what I was doing and just kind of like enhanced and tweaked what I was doing with myself and other people just a little bit. I have so much out for it. So anyway, I feel like it's when the ego patterns and feelings come up that we get tempted to get pulled out of our presence, to get pulled out of our soul energy, because we've not learned how to receive those things while being in the soul energy. And then we jump to the things that we've just been taught and that have worked for us so far. Not really worked, but like worked the best. And really what that's doing is that's jumping into the frequency of those patterns. Because again, we just haven't learned how to stay in the soul frequency while receiving them. So when we jump back into the ego frequency, basically like the frequency of the problem, right? When we grab onto it, we step into it, then we're trying to approach it with the ways of the ego, which is a lot of doing and strategizing and fixing and right and wrong, or even distracting, right? Like trying to get out of the present moment, because in the present moment is when we're fully observing and seeing and feeling and being with it. And we just didn't know how to do that. So of course we were trying to get away from that, right? So again, it's not so much the like getting into the soul energy that I feel like is actually difficult, because that's so natural to us. Like, it's who we are, right? It's just, how can I maintain, how can I hold that vibration when what inevitably happens, which is the ego patterns and things that are coming up that are ready to be released, when they come up, how can I continue to hold that, really alchemize and release the patterns? They leave, I'm still in this energy. New ones come up, I stay in it. They release, I'm still in this energy, right? And that's the process that feels like it was described and demonstrated over the event. But I will take a minute to talk about connecting into our soul presence. So meditation is one of the best ways to do this. And I feel like there's a lot of different ways that you could, but meditation for me was one that worked really well. Dr. Kim Jaramo led us in a meditation that did a particularly good job. And it was essentially like letting our awareness and our presence sort of expand and see all these different aspects of like our known reality. So like our body, our home, our city, our state, our country, the world, right? And just in general, like have awareness for the whole world. And she described something really cool. She described how our body is essentially just a like complex electromagnetic circuit. And if you've ever seen like pictures of a toroidal field, that's like what it is, right? So like we're just this one pulsing electromagnetic circuit, okay? And when you use your awareness to tune into something, your circuitry is registering information from what you're tapping into, because we're not really limited by time and space. So your soul energy, that like unknown part of you, that God energy, is connected to everything. So if I'm like in a meditation and I'm thinking of, I don't know, if I let my awareness go to my dog, then what I feel in my fields is a registering of certain energies that's on my dog, right? And the same thing, if I do it of the state of California or the world or like whatever, like our bodies have the ability to do that. So she led in this really beautiful meditation where we stayed in the observer. We stayed in the soul energy that's just watching and registering what's happening, like no judgment. We see it, right? And then she guided us to connect to unknown energy. The unknown, right? Because the known is only something that really can be conceptualized through the ego, right? And the unknown is like the language of that soul energy. So letting ourselves just connect to the unknown. Yes, of course, that's as a concept, literally, but you know what I'm saying with this, right? And just letting that be. Like, of course, there's not going to be a ton that's going to reveal itself to our ego mind, because our ego mind can't, wrap its mind around the unknown, but letting our soul and our spirit plug into that, and then our fields, our bodies, start to register information, aka energy, aka frequencies, of the unknown on our body, which is the energy of the known, like circulating through our circuitry, through our body. The unknown being spirit, the unknown being God. So like all of a sudden we're having like the energy of life force and of unconditional love, like being moved through currents of energy in our own circuitry, in our own body, just by like plugging into that observing energy, plugging into that soul energy, and letting your awareness connect to that while staying present, like, and being aware of and registering what's happening in your body. And it's always flowing, by the way, too. So you might register it for a second and it keeps moving. So there's nothing that, you're like holding on to. If you're just letting the flow, you're receiving, you're not attaching, you're just observing, right? So again, I feel like that kind of thing is really natural when we just learn some of the basic mechanics of how to do it. I will say for me, and I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to record like a plugging into your soul energy, like maybe a little meditation that'll be free on my YouTube. And I'll put it in the show description whenever that's published if you're curious as to how I sort of like find my way to my soul energy. But it really can be as easy as that. You can take a ton of time, a long meditation, to once you get there to just sit in it, which is something I've been doing because I want to get more familiar with like, what does this really feel like? And the other element of that, and Dr. Kim talked about this in her talk, which was sensational. I'm literally going to do a whole podcast, probably, I'm reading her book, probably on like her concepts and how I understood them and how they're changing things for me, because she's sensational. She was a doctor, an ER doctor, who had a big download about like our health and how we actually can like transmute a lot of energies that show up as physical symptoms to like really be in health energy. And she's spectacular. So I highly recommend looking into her work. one of the things that she talked about is when our body, our circuitry, is used to having currents of energy move through at a certain frequency, which are probably lower frequencies. When lower, all lower means is slower, by the way. This is not like a hierarchy. Like literal lower vibrational frequencies are just slower oscillations of energy. Okay. So our body is used to lower frequencies of energy moving through its currents. And so there is a little bit of like letting your body and your circuits be sort of like adjusted and conditioned to holding higher frequencies of information. And your body has an intelligence of how to do this and how to do this in a way that is gradual enough so that your body doesn't like short circuit it, So there is like an intention and also just like a surrender to whatever happens with your body. But being in meditation where you're intentionally connecting, plugging into your soul place, you're opening up, you can imagine maybe your crown chakra, receiving all of the currents of energy that are of your soul, and just like letting your body acclimate to that. And like the more time you spend in that, the more time that your body and that circuitry gets to adjust and raise and raise and raise that vibration and get used to holding that vibration, like physically, right? She has another part of it too where she talks about taking really deep breaths all the way into your pelvis so that it's not just something that stays like up in your head. It's something that you can really embody and pull into the body. So again, whenever I do this meditation and in the meantime, or however you want to do it, I would definitely recommend that is when you're in that state, like consciously breathe all the way down into your pelvis as a way to like really let that energy move all the way down through your body. But like it's like that is plugging into your soul energy, right? Into that, wow, like I am connected to life force energy. I am connected to unconditional love. I am connected to God right now. And that energy is literally pulsing through my body from my heart, because our heart is the center of that whole field. It's coming down into my heart and then getting pumped out, not only through my whole physical body and communicating to my cells and the molecules and the atoms and everything in my body, but it's also pumping out into the world. And all of the atoms and photons in the world are readjusting based on the frequency that's being emanated from my heart. That's what quantum physics is, by the way. And so just letting yourself be in that energy has a tremendous influence on your physical reality. Period. Which again is something I'll probably talk about maybe a little bit more in this episode, but that is part of the magic that can happen when you're sitting in your soul energy, and especially in something like meditation. So that's connecting to the soul energy part. Now here is the part that gets a little bit complex and can get a little tricky, and also was so wonderful to learn more about at this event, which is receiving the ego, receiving the patterns, and how to stay and hold and maintain that sort of like soul connection, that soul frequency while you're moving through them. Okay, I'm going to describe this however it comes through, however is best for today. But I want to acknowledge that I had like multiple days and multiple examples of how this happens, as well as the work that I've been doing something very similar for like years now that helped make this make sense to me in a big way. So again, I'm going to trust Spirit, God, whatever comes through to explain, and whatever you take from it is perfect. Of course, I'm going to do more episodes about this. I love this kind of stuff. This is what I live to do. I'm even playing around with the idea of like having somebody maybe volunteer to be coached through this kind of process on the podcast so you can hear examples yourself. So maybe if anybody's interested in that, you can DM me. But I'm going to explain this as best as I can in just like a one podcast thing. And just know we're going to build on it in future episodes, or if you want to work with me and like really learn how to do this with yourself, or maybe with clients or something like that, I do have coaching spots available. Okay, so I'm going to describe what it's like when something comes up, and what I'm probably going to do is I'm going to describe how I was doing it before, which I now realize was me kind of like mixing, wanting to do it from a soul place, but kind of doing it in an ego energy, versus how I'm doing it now, which feels entirely different and really feels like it's from the soul place. Okay. So let's just say I do a meditation, I'm super zen, I'm in my soul energy, and I'm feeling so present, because that's, again, I know I mentioned a symptom of being in the soul energy is that you are so present. All there is now. What you're feeling in your body, what you're observing in the world around you, those currents of energies that are moving through you. It's like a super presence, which is so fabulous. And another thing is I usually feel a lot more relaxed too, like at peace, like everything's good, everything's fine. That's the Zen feeling, all right? While I'm in that Zen feeling, maybe it's like a memory or thought that pops up, or maybe it's even just like a physical sensation, right? And maybe it's a memory that brings up anxiety of some sort. Or while I'm being super present and observing all the things that are going on, I'm observing an energy, a feeling, an emotion coming up in my body that feels like anxiety. Now, this is where I would have maybe got tripped up before, is I would have been super zen, and all of a sudden I'm anxious, and I'm like, oh my God, I did it wrong. I'm anxious. I was supposed to be I must not be doing the spiritual thing good enough. Like, let me focus really hard and try and just make the anxiety go away because I'm trying to be in the zen mode, right? Nope, that's not what we're doing. That is repression, essentially. That would be me trying to repress the anxiety, and that's me making a judgment and having a relationship to anxiety coming up. That's me making that mean that when anxiety comes up that I'm doing something wrong. That's what I've labeled it. That's what that pattern is saying when I respond that way, which is totally fine. We can work through that, but it's really important to start gaining awareness for what these patterns are saying. Because part of the beauty of this work is recognizing what is true and what's not true. The things that are true with like a capital T are the things that are in alignment with your source energy, with unconditional love. Those are the things that are capital T true. And your soul is always going to gravitate towards truth. The truth is going to feel better. It's going to feel lighter. It's going to feel cathartic. Right? And the things that are not true, the things that are illusions or lies or, distortions of the ego, those things are going to feel painful and heavy. So even just from is this something that causes me pain, or is this something that causes me true, deep, like relief and zen? Even just from that, you're going to be able to put them in the bucket of where it's coming from. Is it something that's really in line with my soul or with my ego? But like these patterns coming up is an opportunity for us to start distinguishing what's true and what's not. And when we are in an energy, or when we're holding a belief of something that's not true, and we identify that, it gives us the opportunity to shift, transmute, and alchemize that energy to realign with truth, which is the whole point. That's the whole point. We're going to be doing that forever. There's not like an end destination. Like us being able to get really comfortable in that process of like, I can connect to my truth, my essence at any time. And from this place, naturally, and I'll explain a little bit more why this happens, like patterns and energies that are not in alignment with that truth are going to arise so that they can be transmuted, so that they can be released, so that I can understand the truth of what I am even more. And when they come up, I know how to receive them. I know how to love on them. I know how to start to see, distinguish. Where's this coming from? Where's the lie in this? Right? There it is. Yeah, no, we don't have to feel that way anymore. What's the truth? What's the alternative? Right? That is in line with myself. Oh, that's what it is. Yep. That's what it is. Oof, it can dissolve, right? We get to do that process all the time, every day. And what that process is us coming into our truth more and more every day, into ourselves. And the more that we understand our truth, like if we're like collecting it, right? The lighter and lighter we become. Both like less heavy and also like physical light. You could think of it in either way, right? The higher frequency we become, the more and more of ourselves we become. The more and more we know the truth of what we are, and we see that, and we're like, yep, that's what we choose. Like we become more of that every single time we get to do that process of feeling a pattern, of feeling a trigger, receiving it, moving through it, seeing what wasn't true that was in our energy field anyway, that was in our beliefs, transmuting it and finding the truth that is revealed just by seeing what the lie is, right? And feeling that and choosing that moving forward. It's a friggin' beautiful process. It's beautiful. It's the whole point. It's lovely. Okay. So the anxiety is there, and old Bree would have said, damn, that means I did something wrong. Gosh, let me try and get back into the spiritual energy. Nope. That's not what we're doing now. Another version of Bree would have looked at that and thought, oop, like here's an energy. It's time for me to like fix this energy. And that is an example of one of those moments where kind of like straddling between the ego energy and the soul energy, right? Because the soul truth that I was starting to know was that there's nothing really bad in us. It's just like it needed to come up for a reason, and it does something for us when it comes up. And really our only job, if we had a job, is like moving through it, right? That part did feel like it was alignment with the truth, but how I was doing that and approaching it with that kind of fixing energy was the ego part. Because there's only ever fixing and right and wrong when we're in the ego mind, right? So this was an example of me having an awareness of like, oh, I was kind of straddling between two. How can I fully receive this from my soul energy? And that's how the ego stuff can like move through so much quicker. If you ever find yourself feeling like you have to do something, ego energy. Whenever you realize that you can just be, present moment, allow it, receive it, chances are you're more aligned with the soul energy. Before, it would have come up, the anxiety, and I'd been like, okay, let's figure out where this is coming from so that we can recondition it, re-alchemize it, right? Which again is also a signal, even that language is a signal that I was trying to do something that really felt like a soul thing with an ego strategy. The figuring something out, it kind of takes this like active energy, ego. Okay. And even how I and this is a little bit harder to describe because it was a thing for me, but like in my own mind, it felt like I was like boots on the ground with the trigger itself and trying to like shift through things. Right. And it's funny having this alternative. I'm very close to actually explaining now, where like even that visual of like being on the ground and whatever, like was now in hindsight a signal that I was trying to solve the ego problem from the ego energy. I was like getting down to the vibration of the issue to try and solve the issue. And that's why it was feeling a little clunky and it wasn't really doing the trick. It was starting to do the trick, and there were some moments that it really was, because again, I was being influenced by that soul pull, that soul truth, some of those moments of inspiration, but I just didn't know how to fully be back in the soul energy and stay in it as that was moving through. So here is what I learned and what I'm doing now, explained to the best of my ability in this short time. So I do that thing where I plug into my soul energy, I plug into my presence, and honestly what it kind of looks like is like a vast and like dark solar system. And it's almost like the back of my head is like absorbing back into that. And like my eyeballs are part of the space, like just like observing like what's in the space in the middle, because the space all around goes on forever. It's infinite, right? There's all of this stuff out there that like who knows what it is. And within, kind of like in the middle, is all of the things that can be known, all of the stuff, anything that comes up. Okay, so I kind of like absorb back into this kind of like galaxy universe kind of energy. And when I'm there, I feel that way that I do when I'm meditating, when I'm super plugged into my soul place. I feel calm. I feel like I have perspective. I feel wise. I feel safe. I feel connected to that love energy. Like it has a feeling to it. I'm like, okay, I'm here. And then whatever the energy of what's coming up, which can be, again, through emotion, through physical sensation, sometimes memories are what trigger the energy. But again, it's not about anything happening at any point in time, like back in the past or in the future. The memories just trigger the energy that's alive in our body. So really what it is in any of those examples is the energy becoming known to us, us becoming aware of the energy, right? So I'm plugged into that soul place, and I feel that energy come up in my mind's eye. A lot of times I'll close my eyes for this, right? And it might have some sort of visual representation. Sometimes it looks like a different version of me, right? Maybe at this age, maybe younger. Sometimes maybe it has a different look to it, like something that's representing the energy of this feeling because I'm welcoming it, okay? The unknown, my soul, is bigger than any energy that could come out of my body or from my ego. It's bigger, it's infinite, whereas the ego and its patterns are limited in nature. They might still feel big, they might still feel painful, but the soul is always bigger, always big enough to hold it. And if it feels like your presence is like really close and all up into it, like I'll take a minute to breathe and let myself expand bigger than it to where it feels like I have so much space around what that is. Letting it expand, because you are bigger than any of these little human things that come up. And it's good. And it's okay. So I let that anxiety come up in my mind's eye. I see it. And some of the phrases that Kyle offered us throughout this are things like, whatever the feeling is, you are welcome in my body. A big part of this first step, and it's important not to skip steps on this, is to receive it. And I know the steps things, that sounds a little ego-based, but rock with me. We're going to move with it. Is to receive it, is like to fully allow it, because it's our resistance of these energies that have prevented them from being fully metabolized in our bodies and fully released. So we're going to fully accept the energy because we know it can't hurt us. We know it can't taint us. And because of the fact that it feels icky, it means it's not true. We just haven't learned how it's not true yet. I'm going to say that again. We can welcome this energy fully because we're in our soul presence that's bigger than it, and it can't hurt what we are. It can't. It cannot threaten it. And because inherent to the fact that this is coming up and feeling icky, it's not true. We don't have to be scared about something about this being true, because it's not. But we just might not have like seen how it's not true yet, and that's okay. It's okay. So we receive it. Anxiety is allowed in my body. I'm allowed to feel anxious in my body. I'm allowed to feel scared in my body. I'm allowed to feel worthless in my body. I'm allowed, whatever the feelings are that arise, when I connect and receive this energy that's coming up, I'll ask it questions. And this is stuff I've been doing in my work, kind of like a little self-inquiry, like, how are you feeling? What is this about? Why is that thing you're upset about so important? What is it? What are you making it mean to you, right? Like that soul energy gets curious with this ego pattern trigger kind of energy that comes up. And boy, did they come talking. But you might have to wait. Let them kind of figure out how they want to say it. Just be curious and you'll get some answers on that, right? So let's just say for an example, one of these days I got a little anxious because I was just really being in the present moment and I didn't have a plan of like what I was going to do, like the stuff for my business, keep it growing, get sales, all the stuff that in the 3D world we're really concerned about, right? And so I welcome in that, and they're saying, yep, I want to do that plan. I really want to get these results. It's really important to me. If I don't have these plans, if I don't have these to-do lists, like what if really bad things happen? And I let them feel, man, like they're full on spiraling in front of me. And I'm like, yep, that's okay. The spiral is welcome in my body. The fear is the panic about it is welcome in my body. That's okay. It's okay. And I'm staying in that loving soul presence that knows that it's all fine. It's okay. It's okay. And because it's all okay, like it's all going to turn out okay, and because the soul is never going to be touched or tainted at all by this energy, they get to play it out. We get to see it all, right? So they keep talking, they keep kind of falling apart, and like, yep, tell me more. I want to see it. Let it go. Let it go, right? Maybe in my connection and observing the energy, I might feel tears. I might want to kind of shake or move a little bit, but I'm still just observing it. I'm not picking it up. I'm not like moving into the middle of the energy, okay? And there's a little bit of a distinction there because I'm staying in the soul energy while I'm observing it, but I'm really letting my soul energy see it. I'm really letting it just like receive it and letting it move through my body, letting the sensations be allowed in my body. Okay, so they keep going and going, this fear, I'm scared, all this kind of stuff. What are you scared of? Triggered part of your, this triggered part. Oh, I'm scared that my life's going to fall apart if I don't do anything. Like the bank account's going to go small and, bad things are going to happen and like, et cetera, et cetera. Like my life will fall apart if I don't do, essentially. I'm like, okay, I receive that. And then here's the other part that feels kind of crazy and tricky. But again, Kyle explained and had a lot of examples on, is allowing the concept of your worst case scenario to be okay, which is really letting it be okay, because all of those things you're afraid of are only ever happening in you, like in your brain, in your mind, right? Like letting your soul energy hold, maintain the everything is fine energy, like staying steady so that this anxious energy can fall apart a little bit. Right? When we don't stay steady in the soul energy, we jump into this ego energy. The ego thinks it needs to keep maintaining this whole thing to keep us safe. When we really hold the energy that we're safe, that we're untouchable, that nothing can threaten us, and that we're generating our own reality with our fears, and really the truth is that we're fine, that we're okay, then this energy can fully play out and dissolve because we've sort of created a little bit of that leadership and that like parental energy of like, no, it's really okay. Like I mean it when I say it's okay. You can keep going and I'm receiving you, but like really it's okay. We're holding it, right? And so that would be an example of what I did with this anxiety. So it goes, things are really going to fall apart, And I receive that. Things can fall apart in my body. My bank account can go to zero in my body. I can lose my house in my body. Things can become terrible. I can be in despair in my body. All of that is safe to be in my body. It's allowed to be in my body. And the reason why it's allowed is, again, because I'm staying plugged into the soul self. The soul self is not bothered by any of that. It's all okay. It's okay. It's really going to be okay. Let that move. And then this is where I start to see the truth and the lies part. In that, with all of that information being revealed, by just letting it move through me and having that sort of compassionate curiosity, I can see that there's a belief that bad things, like truly bad things can happen to me, like outside of my influence or control or something, right? Or really that bad things can happen to me in general. That feels really painful. That's a lie. It's not true. It's not true. It's not in alignment with my energy as source. And even if I don't understand what the alternative truth is, me just knowing that that's not the truth and allowing that for a minute, asking my higher self, asking my guides, like show me what the actual truth is. I don't get it just yet. but like show it to me in due time. That's good too, okay? In this example for myself, I received that. I received that that's not true. And I might ask myself, okay, what is the truth? What's the truth is that I'm totally safe in this moment, in the now. And when I'm in the now, I'm in my spirit. In this moment, everything is totally fine. Plus, I know that my reality is generated based on that energy that my heart is pumping out into the world. When I am embodying that everything is truly okay energy, I'm pumping out signals to the world of creating that everything is fine energy in my world. Okay? Even if I was pumping out energy of being afraid and everything's not okay, even if those circumstances arose, I still would have all of the tools that I need to be okay. I would still have the wherewithal and like the universe coming in to support me to help show me the truth of how to like get out of those situations. Like it is fine. Like it's okay. Even if I'm not like perfectly generating whatever kind of like it's okay, because even in those routes, I'm learning firsthand what is true about me and what's not. And the only way that those circumstances can even come to light is if I'm still buying into the lies, if I'm still choosing to believe them. And again, what feels kind of inevitable is that we're always going to be pulled towards our truth. Always. And even if there's an amount of time where I'm still in the lies and I'm still buying into it or something, like little by little, I'm going to be shown what's true and what's not. And little by little, I'm going to be generating a reality that is aligned with all of that knowing and all of that goodness in my spirit. And those quote unquote bad things that happen are not really bad because they're pointing me back to me. They're pointing me back to love. They're pointing me back to my truth, and that's beautiful. And it's not hurt anything. I'm not less of a soul if I spent 30 years buying into the lies and not understanding the truth of myself. Like, I'm not any less of a soul or any less capable than if I come out the womb getting it and never losing it. Like, it doesn't harm anything. It does not harm anything. Okay? That was a big breakthrough for me. Everything is fine. That is the truth. Nothing can harm me. That is also the truth. So this idea that goodness in my life and safety in my life is hinged on my actions, on my doing, is not true. That's just a way that the ego and the 3D world thinks that it works. So of course I thought it was that's how it was. And that's okay. Again, everything, it's allowed. But that's just not the truth. So I let its energy move. I receive it in that loving place. I start to see the truth and the lies, you could say, or the things that are not true. And I choose the things that are true. I literally just choose to believe those. And in that container, in that space, that energy, that pattern transmutes. It dissolves. Especially even if you get to the place where you see that it was beautiful. Like, gosh, that anxiety that has been coming up for so long, fueling me into like doing energy, that part of myself, that part of my ego, really, was so beautiful. Gosh, it was trying to keep me safe. Based on the information I knew at the time, it was doing the Lord's work, you know? It was doing so much to keep me safe and trying to help good things happen for me. And the fact that it kept insisting and insisting and insisting that was the way that we should go was what created this moment right now. Led me to all of the experiences and all the places that kind of like helped get me, on some level, to the place where I even had this awakening in the first place, to where I had the tools to be able to receive it and for it to show me where things were distorted in my belief system so that I could know the truth of what I am, which is that I'm safe. And that how I create my reality is by how I'm being right now. And if I'm choosing to be in that soul energy, letting those soul frequencies just run through the currents of my body and just letting that lead how I experience this moment right now, that is how I create my reality. I got to learn that because of this pattern, because of it coming up and it being really painful because it wasn't true, and me being finally be able to receive this and learn from this pattern now. Like, gosh, that pattern is so beautiful. So grateful for it. I'm so grateful for it. I don't need to pick it up. I don't need to choose it. I don't need to step into that frequency anymore. But gosh, I love it. I appreciate it. Oof, and I can feel even more of that energy leaving my body now. Again, breathing in all the way down into my pelvis as I'm receiving it, and breathe out. And you'll feel when you've moved that energy. And again, it might not even be like an instantaneous thing. You might have to revisit that energy many times, but the version of that energy that came up when you finally had presence You stayed in the presence while the energy moved. It moved through, you open your eyes, and you're just in the presence again. You're just in the moment. You're just in your soul. And that's that. Now, the other cool thing is that when you're in your soul energy and your soul presence, when you're in the now, not only do you receive difficult or negative emotions or your egos and patterns differently, but you also receive everything else that's around you different in the best way. Like, colors are more vibrant. Things are more beautiful. Things feel better. Like, when you're really letting that current of like that life force, love, God energy move through you, like, things feel different. The way you're receiving the world around you, like, you're seeing God everywhere. Everywhere. Like, every single bit of what I'm looking out around me is God reflected back to me. And like, I'm in my God energy reflecting that back out to the world. Like, that is crazy and wonderful. So I get to stay, I get to experience that feeling. From that feeling, I might kind of feel the inspiration of like, oh, this feels like it'd be something to do. Like, I'm hungry now, let me go make lunch. Or, I'm kind of feeling like it'd be nice to move my body, let me go for a walk. Or, oh, I feel really excited about something I'd want to do for my job. Like, I'm going to go up and do it. But when I'm getting up and I'm taking that action, I'm still doing it from my presence. And I'm not doing it from that kind of ego energy that starts to like ruminate and what about tomorrow and what about this and what about this and I can't get that wrong and I've got to, it's like it's a totally different energy of me doing things. And it feels so good. I feel so much more relaxed. I feel so much more at peace. And like, it's literally like the whole axis of my world has been shifted. And it's the best thing ever. I'm going to take a quick break and then come back with just a few more things about this big breakthrough. And again, kind of explaining where I'm coming from when I'm doing this soul series, so that maybe you too can join me in spending a little bit more time from your soul place, from your soul center, as opposed from your ego energy, and just seeing how that feels to you. Okay, for this last part, I'm going to try to very quickly explain something that Kyle talked about in one of his sessions. I think it was maybe on the third day that like really helped anchor in this. And it's basically some of the ways that you can start to distinguish when you're in ego energy and when you're in soul energy. And even if you identify you're in ego energy, the answer is always going to be just come back into your soul and into the now. That's always the answer. Just come back into it. Oh, okay, I'm back. Maybe the next thing you feel when you're back in the present moment is that you need to do a little bit of receiving of some of that ego energy. Maybe not. But like, literally the answer is either going to be, yeah, I'm in soul energy. This is nice. Or it's going to be like, oop, I kind of noticed. I was in a little bit of an ego energy. Okay, let me step back into the soul energy. Okay, yeah, this feels good. This feels nice. Okay, so this is what happened. He was working with somebody on stage who's doing like a one-on-one coaching thing for somebody who's done a lot of spiritual work, and was having a physical symptom of insomnia and was really having a hard time with this insomnia. Okay. And so it was really interesting because even with all of this person's like spiritual healing knowledge, like applying it in a truly like conscious way was kind of evading him a little bit, and he didn't know why. And so as he was explaining, Kyle like got up and started to like demonstrate this in a really cool way. So he talked about like when we're in ego energy as being on the planet of the ego. And I really loved this because when we're on a planet, like we're subject to its laws of gravity. Like literally our vantage point of how we're looking at things is from the vantage point of that planet. And like all of the things that are on that planet we're mixed up in, right? Like we're on the energy of that planet when we're like literally like standing on it, let's just say, right? So there's like the ego planet, and then there's the soul planet, one that's, next to it in the galaxy or something, right? And when we're on the soul planet, it feels very different. It's a different laws of gravity, different energy, different things that are there. It applies by totally different rules. And you could say that these are like different frequencies of energy. You could say that it's like being in like a 3-dimensional energy, and all of the laws of that and what that experience is the binary and the polarity and all that kind of stuff is like true, versus how things work when you're in like a 4D or 5D energy is different. It's kind of similar to that, but I really liked him talking about the planets. Okay, so we're in the ego planet when we're in the soul planet. And there was times where, Kyle was asking this guy, how are you feeling right now? And his answer, he would like place him in the space on the stage between these two places where he had kind of indicated the ego planet and the soul planet, right? And he's like, based on how you're even answering these questions, we're going to be able to tell if you're really in your soul energy or if you're a little bit or totally in your ego energy, right? And it was just a fascinating example as he was working through this whole situation. And through this, there kind of became lists of things that are characteristic of when we're on the ego planet versus when we're in the soul planet. And those are what I'm going to share with you. Okay, so the first thing, when we're talking about doing something, like I got to do something, right? Like I have to take action. I have to again, there's this like active, like almost like a forcing. Like I'm the one that has to generate that out there. That doing energy is a sign we're in ego. When we simply are, we're just are, and we're just being, that's when we're in soul energy. Also, when us being is more important than anything that we could do, that's also a sign that we're plugged into the intelligence and the wisdom of our soul versus doing, feeling more important than just a moment of being. That's a signal that we're in an ego planet and we're on the ego planet. Okay? When we feel ourselves being really obsessed with or really fixating on any concept of with time, we're in ego energy. So maybe that's the past, maybe that's the future, etc., etc. That's when we're on the ego planet. Versus when we're obsessed with anything and everything that has to do with right now, soul energy. Soul planet. We're on the soul planet. I'm going to go through and list the other stuff I have written down for the ego planet. When we say things like, I can't do that because, ego planet. Shame, ego planet. Blame, ego planet. Fear, ego planet. All of those emotions, if we're feeling any of those, we're in the vibration and in the midst of something in our ego. Okay? When our well-being is conditional, this was a big one. Dr. Kim talked a lot about this, about like us being healthy is conditional on even if like we exercise or if we eat healthy or something, like us believing that our body is more influenced by those things than just by our ability to tap into life force and God energy. We're living on the planet of the ego and therefore subject to its rules. But this calling of being in our soul energy means that we're running by the rules of the universe, of our soul, right? Which again is bigger, more unlimited, and really more powerful than the limitations of everything on the ego planet. So well-being is conditional. If we're in any sort of pattern that tells us that we are what we achieve or we are like our results, what we are is like determined by the things that we create or our worth is or something, ego planet. This was a fun one. A lot of people, when they would go up there and they would say their problem, Kyle would like offer them a way to look at it and they go, oh, well, I already know that. Go on. He was like, when that energy comes up, that's a really sneaky pattern of keeping you really closed to the energy, to the perspective that's trying to come through when you say, but like, yeah, I already know that, but like you are being closed. That's just another way of saying I'm not open to that. Ego pattern. Ego pattern. There's a way to move through, like, that doesn't make sense to me yet, but I really am open to it. I feel like maybe I'm not getting that fully, but I want to receive that. My soul can understand and receive anything. So like maybe let me just be and receive that, right? Like that second one would be being in our soul energy. But if we're finding ourselves like responding, yeah, I already know that, whatever. Ego energy. Called out because my patterns would do that same thing. Competition, ego planet. When we feel really fixated on external circumstances of any kind, we are on the ego planet and we're subjecting ourselves to the rules and restrictions of the ego planet. So if we're feeling really fixated on the amount of money in our bank account or what we're thinking the status of our relationships are or our material goods or even like the state of the world or something, like if we are really fixated on what's wrong with those things or even what's right as a way to kind of like source good feelings, we are on the ego planet. When we find ourselves falling into like, we're supposed to do this or we're supposed to do that, even about spirituality and consciousness, we're kind of doing spirituality and consciousness from the ego planet, or we're like somewhere in between. There's no supposed to, because that implies that there's a right and a wrong way, and that one's better or worse. And the worst one, probably what's underneath that, is a fear that the thing we're not supposed to do can somehow cause bad things to happen for us. And that's not how it works. We're not threatened by anything. Nothing. All we're doing is stepping more and more into our truth And even in times when we're not in our truth, it's not threatening us in any way. We're just learning. There's no supposed to. There's just being. And right now, and everything is fine and everything is perfect. Again, if there's like a feeling of we got to do it right or wrong, which brings up a lot of judgment energy. That was another pattern of mine that I got to really see in a big way. I'll probably do a whole episode on like exposing my pattern of judgment. Like any kind of judgment like means that there's a right or wrong. There's observation and there's judgment. And we know the difference. When we're honest with ourselves, we know the difference. So let me read through but my list of the soul planet stuff on the other side of the ego planet. When you have things come up, and maybe you notice an ego pattern saying, gosh, I have to do that. I feel obligation to do that. Like I'm mad about that, right? Feeling resistance to those circumstances, your soul self has energy of, I have the opportunity to do this. The soul strategy for approaching anything is to come into myself, the I am that I am, okay? When I come into the energy of my soul, and let's just say there's something that I wanted to experience that maybe came up through me being inspired by an external circumstance. Maybe I, imagine having $1 million or something, right? The soul strategy knows that circumstance inspires a certain energy. Let's just say it's of abundance, okay? When you're living from the soul planet, what you do is you go, let me come into myself. Let me come into my soul energy and let me receive those vibrations, currents running along my body of abundance. Let me experience that within myself. Let me emanate that from me. And when I'm really in that energy, again, my electromagnetic frequency is sending out signals to the world around me that is going to naturally produce abundant things in some infinitely wonderful design that the universe has. It's bigger than what our ego could do anyway. So I don't really have to worry about the doing. I just have to worry about being in now, period. Where again, the opposite of that in the ego is what do I have to do to create abundance? What do I have to even do to feel abundance? That's again kind of a sneaky way where we're kind of between the planets. No, you don't have to do to feel anything. You just have to be. You just have to feel. It's going to be so sneaky. Yeah, the love is always going to be bigger than any of the feelings when you're on the soul planet. The love is always going to be bigger. The space that you have to receive it and just expand to be bigger than it. And being bigger than it isn't about being better. It's about being able to fully encompass it and surround it in the love that you are. And just let it be. Beautiful. As opposed to competition, when you're on the soul planet, you're all about collaboration. On the soul planet, you don't know shit. You don't know anything. Everything is unknown. You're living in the world of the unknown, and that's okay. The ego's obsessed with knowing things and having to have answers and having everything clarified because that's the ego's strategy for safety. And when you're on the ego planet, and again, really the role of the ego is survivability and safety, so it's fixated with that. That's its strategy, right? When we're on the soul planet, we don't gotta know things. We don't gotta know nearly as much as we think we gotta know. We just gotta be. And anything that we need to know will arise when we're in presence and we're in the being. We can just ask, what is emerging? When I'm in this moment right now, what is emerging? That's all I gotta know. I don't know anything. It's great. I learned this weekend how much I don't know, and that was freaking great. I don't know anything. And the last thing, again, in contrast, is when you're living on the soul planet and the soul energy, when you're plugged into that, it's all about how you're feeling and how you're perceiving. And that's where you're living in. You might be responding a little bit from that place, but you're not looking outside and finding things to be at war with, finding things to resist, finding things to judge, and letting that somehow create your to-do list of then what you need to do. Again, that's an ego planet, ego strategy kind of thing. When we're residing on the soul planet, we're looking around and we're seeing that everything around us is reflecting God back to us, reflecting spirit, love back to us. It's helping reveal truths to us if maybe there was a pattern of distortion that comes up that we get to move through, or we just get to take in the beauty of all the things that are around us. And even me being in that state of appreciation is me tapping into an energy of gratitude and abundance, which feels great. That's exactly what I wanted in all these external circumstances I was, trying to manifest, trying to do to manifest, right? I'm already feeling it. It feels great. I'm just in the present moment. Again, letting the currents of those energies move through me, me experiencing those, is going to take care of all of the other stuff. The next moment that I meet is going to be perfect and is going to be aligned with the energy that I've been embodying. I'm just going to keep being in this moment now forever. I'm just going to keep doing the same thing where I'm receiving it, I'm feeling it, I'm staying plugged into the presence of it. And if spirit comes through me to move me to do something, I'll do that in the moment. But that's a different kind of doing than, okay, what's the to-do list of everything I got to do? It's different. I know the words are the same. Maybe I'll one day soon have a differentiation in that. Okay, I have a feeling this has already been long enough, and this has been quite a lot of information for you to be getting on with. So I'm going to end it there. Spirit, guides, is there anything else? Just as like a last word you want to share? Yeah, it's all just about being in that like capital L love energy. Yeah, some of what trips people up is like in the ego planet, in the ego worlds, love has a certain definition, but when you're plugged into that soul energy, like love is so much bigger than our ego thinks it is. And we got to get more familiar with that love energy and the truths and the laws of that. And maybe understand that some of what we call love when we're in our human energy, when we're in our ego energy, is just a pattern of the ego. It's not really what love is. So like plugging back into that universal kind of love and just being like, show me what that's like. Show me what that is. I want to know. It's unknown to me. I'd like to experience it. I'd like to dive into the unknown a little bit and see what happens. See what happens. And remember, we're not doing any of this to escape our humanness. Like our humanness is part of how we get to know and experience our divinity. Dr. Kim said it's like being in this world, but not of it. Like technically we're in the 3D human planet, but we're not being of it, aka we're not like walking around on this planet only in the 3D energies. We're being of our soul. We're learning how to like really know the truth of who we are and embody those energies. And we're in those energies while we're walking around on the human planet. And that's so fun. Like, that's so fun because there's a lot of really beautiful things about being here and being human. And even the things that feel painful and are difficult, again, like become opportunities for us to know our own divinity more and to feel more love and to give more love, which then becomes receiving more love. And it's like this constant cycle that's freaking beautiful and magical. I hope you guys all have a wonderful week. Let me know if you have any questions. Again, you can follow my soul series where I'm just documenting what each day, kind of like the prominent things of each day, is I'm making the choice to try and live on this soul planet as much as I can and what life looks like when I do that. So I invite you to join me there. The links for following me and all the places will be in the show description. And I love you all so much. If you want help with this kind of stuff, with like moving through and transmuting energies, you can book coaching sessions with me. You can go on my website, healingwithbrie.net. I love like just helping people, being a space for people to work through that. But honestly, I was really happy to share all of this information with you so that you can start to explore what it might look like for you. So share this episode if you liked it, and I will see you guys next week for more breakthroughs. Bye everyone. Thank you for listening to this episode and for tuning in to Breakthroughs with Brie. Please share your favorite episodes with your friends and loved ones, and please like, subscribe, and rate the podcast on whatever platform you're listening to it, as it helps me continue to create these episodes to help support your breakthroughs. I would love to stay connected with you, so please follow me on social media at Healing with Brie. Please check out my website at healingwithbrie.net, which will always have the most up-to-date information about the services that I'm currently offering. And please consider using the link in the show descriptions to subscribe to my email list so you can be the first to hear about any offerings. You can get all of the free resources that I offer, as well as get my weekly channeled messages. My deepest love and gratitude to you, and I can't wait to have more breakthroughs with you next week.